Welcome to the BR Connection, our program focusing on our Bridgewater Raynham Regional School District. I'm Pat Riley, and our new co-host is our new superintendent, Derek Swenson. Welcome.
Thank you, Pat. Nice, great to be here.
Yes, and we'll be doing this on a monthly basis, so people can watch the program listing for BR Connection, and that will be us.
That'll be terrific,
And
we'll
we'll
have
bring
different
guests,
guests
exactly.
from around the district. So
But we thought for a show we'd have you come and you could be both co-host and a guest. So
Terrific.
how's it going so far? How many weeks now into the school?
into this actual school year, we're almost
That's about
2 months into the school year.
amazing.
But since my appointment, October 1, so we're about 3 weeks into that appointment, and
Yes.
it's been outstanding. We're doing great things, and I have a great team behind me and the support of an unbelievable school committee. So the transition's been seamless, and we have a new assistant superintendent, thus my smile. And he is outstanding, and he's hit the ground running, and really is instinctive in terms of the things that he needs to do on a daily basis. I don't have to guide him much, which is great.
Great.
And we kind of had an overview meeting initially when he began. I talked about some of our district initiatives and the objectives and some of our core values and some of the things that we wanted to improve upon this school year. And again, he's just kind of moved forward and hit the ground running. And he's out and about visiting the schools. His name's Ryan Powers. He's a former assistant principal from Brockton for 10 years. Before that, he was a sixth grade teacher in Rentham. So he has a very diverse background. He has a strong special ed background, and which helps us out in the district because we have many special ed programs and sub-separate programs that we have throughout the district that he can assist our Director of Student Services, Carla Thomas, with. So it's been a really good fit, and it's been a great 3 weeks, and we're looking forward to the remainder of the school year.
Excellent, very good. Now, obviously, the appointment of the assistant superintendent comes on the recommendation of the superintendent, which at the time was Dr. Forbes and also yourself. What was it about him that you felt would be a really good fit for the district?
We had a screening committee first, and that through that screening committee they brought forth some candidates, and Mr. Powers just came in, and the way in which he answered the questions would be very similar, eerie similar to the way in which I would have answered those questions. And I just felt as though the philosophy he had, which was student first and student centered approach to education, and just his experiences that he's had, he was asked by former superintendent of Brockton, Matt Malone, who later went on to work for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as the Secretary of Education under Commissioner Mitchell Chester. He was asked by Dr. Malone to take over what's called a turnaround school. Basically, that was a chronic underperforming school in the city of Brockton. It was a level 4 school, soon to be level 5, and possibly going to kind of go into receivership where the state comes in and takes over that school. He was asked to come in as the principal of that school, which was the Baker Elementary School in Brockton. And it was a task that was going to be a daunting one, and he took it on full force. And he improved the test scores in that building, and what he really did was he really turned around the professional culture within that building, and what he described as his means of doing so really kind of tapped into what I'm trying to do here within the district to make it a more cohesive district. The We Are BR is not just a catchy catchphrase that we say around, that truly bringing both sides of the district together and having that sense of unity, one team, one family, and that's what we've really been stressing this school year. And he just has that background. And I just got done walking some of the elementary schools, and some of the elementary teachers approached me, and they were just raving about him.
Great.
And how approachable he was. And he came into the classroom, and he sat in on a lesson, and he was working with students. And that's what we wanted. We wanted someone like that who's invested. He is also a Raynham resident. He also has 2 children in the district. So like myself, he has skin in the game. Every decision that we make collectively as a team impact our children and the children within our communities. So that's definitely a huge selling point when he came aboard.
Absolutely. Very good. I know one of the challenges of being superintendent is you have so much to do. So much comes to your office. And sometimes to be able to get out into the schools is a challenge. And I know you have a plan that you're visiting the schools on a regular basis.
Yes, and that's one thing that I stated to him when he came in. We have a very high volume of calls and meetings that we have throughout the week, because I'm realizing now that as the superintendent, it's more about the business of education than it is truly the education. When I was in that position of assistant superintendent, where I dealt with more of the curriculum, dealing with principals. So there's a lot that I have to do now, but I always said from the beginning that if I was going to take this on, one of the things that I always felt as though helped me in my practice was being visible in the buildings and having a pulse of what was going on within the district. And I made a promise to myself that even if I was in the big seat, I was still going to continue on with that line of practice. And I actually sat down with Mr. Powers on one of our first days together, and I said one of the most important things we need to do is to make sure that we are being supportive of our building principals, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our support staff, our custodians, our clerical workers, everyone who works within the organization, to make sure that it runs efficiently each and every day. And most importantly, to be visible within our buildings and know that we are supporting our children each and every day. So we came up with a plan that, and our executive secretary, Judy McDougall, is fabulous. And I just said, you need to block off 2 days a week. About 2 blocks in my schedule. You don't plan any meetings. We don't plan anything unless there's an emergency situation that we have to come. And when I'm on the Bridgewater side of the district visiting the Bridgewater schools, Mr. Powers is visiting the Raynham schools. The following week, I go to the Raynham side, and he's visiting the Bridgewater side. So every week they're seeing someone from central office within the building. And then it helps build those professional relationships with our principals, with our staff, so that they know we're approachable, and if they have any issues that they want to bring to our attention, our door's always open to them. And it's a much more proactive way of handling situations rather than having to be reactive once we find out after the fact, because we weren't made aware of. So it's working out great. Folks have made reference that we've been quite visible in the buildings in the last few weeks, so that's what we want. And it's not about a gotcha. We're not trying to find things wrong in your practice. We're trying to show you that we are invested, and we want to be there to support you, and we want our kids to feel a sense of safety in terms of us being in the building, knowing that we're invested as well. So it's working out great so far.
Very good. Had some good news at the school committee meeting last night relative to the MCAS testing. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Right now, our data came in. What happens usually around this time of the year is that we get our accountability rating from the state. That means whether we are a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, level 4, or a level 5 school district. We're currently a level 2 school district, although we do have some level 1 schools within our school district. What happened last year was that the state went to 2 assessments, and it was up to the local districts to determine whether they wanted to move forward with the new park assessment or the MCAS assessment. And at that point, with the guidance of the superintendent, Dr. Forbes, and the support of the school committee, we decided to stay MCAS for a year, just because it was no definitive answer at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education if they were truly going to move to the new park assessment. And at that point, with budgets being what they are, and being very tight, and we wanted to be fiscally responsible, we did not feel it was in the best interest of the district or our teachers or students to put a lot of resources into professional development or the different resources we were going to need to move towards the park assessment if we truly didn't have an answer how the state was going to go either way.
Exactly.
So we stayed with MCAS, and we have our MCAS data, but we don't have our accountability rating because the state now has to correct both assessments, the park and the MCAS. So they started first with the park assessment, so that pushed our timeline back a little bit as far as our accountability rating to early December. So we'll be doing a report out at the December 16th school committee meeting about what level school district and what level schools we have within the district. But the data that we have in regard to MCAS showed a very positive trend in all of our schools, and we are scoring above the state average in almost every category within every school. I believe the high school was 18 out of the 18 that we were above the state average. We had some huge percentage increases, especially in the areas of math. La Liberty Elementary School is one that really stood out to us last year. They had a 17% increase in their math scores for the
Terrific.
4th grade, and I attest that to sound instructional practice of our teachers, the support of our admin team, implementing the different initiatives that we have, and the support of the school committee that we've had over the course of the last few years in terms of purchasing really research-based practiced instructional strategies and resource materials such as our ST Math program, and we now have implemented in grades K through 5 our new Everyday Math 4 program, which is totally aligned to Common Core, and we're starting to see definite positive trends, especially in the areas of math, which was a need for us when we did our needs assessment 3 or 4 years ago when I came in as the director of curriculum and later assistant superintendent. And so that's been the big push. We've also had some increases in the areas of ELA, and again, we attest that to sound instructional practice of our teachers and the expectations we're setting now, but also curriculum resources such as Empowering Writers, which is an outstanding research-based writing program that our teachers are using with fidelity, and we're starting to see a real increase in the percentage scores of our short answer and long composition on the MCAS. So again, all of those resources that we've been brought in, our teachers are utilizing with fidelity and have been supported by the school committee. So it's a definite team approach to where we're going, and it's paying dividends as you look at the positive trends in our data.
Terrific, that's great. Now, as far as curriculum is concerned, and obviously that's so important, you were the director of curriculum before you became assistant superintendent, then you had both jobs to do. Does that fall now to our assistant superintendent, or how is that going to be handled?
Sure, and even when Dr. Forbes was here, and she had such a strong curriculum background, and I was so fortunate to have been able to work under her for the time that she was here. She also, continued to have a hand in the curriculum piece. At the end of the day, I want to make sure what we're bringing in first and foremost is research based. We do our due diligence and we pilot, which is what we do with any new curriculum resource. We pilot with our lead teachers or our department heads at the high school. We collect data on that pilot. We do a full evaluation of that pilot, and then we figure out whether we can budget it into the following fiscal year. And then we then bring it forward to the committee for approval. So I'll definitely with the budget piece, because that's a huge piece of my job right now, and that's something we've actually started, believe it or not, to start to put together for FY17. We just started FY16, and we're already thinking about FY17, but you have to be that way. You have to start early on, and you have to start to kind of anticipate what the funding's going to be from the state and what the towns can afford in terms of the assessments. So the curriculum piece, because there's a budgetary impact, I'll still continue, but that's still kind of a passion of mine. I still enjoy that piece to the job. So, Mr. Powers will take on, the brunt of that responsibility, which is very difficult, especially in a district this size, with pre-K through 12, with, you have a regional district, so you have 2 towns that you have to deal with. And again, our goal is to make sure that continue on with what Dr. Forbes had implemented and instituted a few years ago, with that consistency on both sides of the district, that all the instructional practices, all of the instructional materials are equitable on both sides of the district, because all of our students filter into one collective high school. And we want to make sure that they're all coming in with the same foundation so they are successful at the high school level. So, but yeah, I'll still kind of have a hand in that, but for the most part, I'm realizing now there's a lot more that's on my plate than it was as the assistant superintendent. But it's good it's good stuff. I mean, it's things, I'm dealing a lot more with the working with community, representation with safety officials and,
Yes.
and some of our local policymakers and a lot with, families. And I was able to get out to all of the PTO meetings over the course of the month of October, and that was a great way to kind of, introduce some of, my philosophies and initiatives, and opened up that dialogue to let parents know that I have an open door policy. If you need to discuss, any issues, come to me. So I've had, after those meetings, I've had a lot of follow-up meetings with parents that may have had some concerns or just some questions about the direction that the district's going in. So.
Absolutely, and it's so important to have that supportive parent and community groups because they're an incredible resource, and we need to take advantage of them. And mention the safety committee. That is so important to have our public safety officials working with the school district on a regular basis. And we have our police chiefs and fire chiefs that are involved in that, in addition to our school resource officers.
Yes, we have what we call our safety and security team, and we meet quarterly. And it's the representation from both sides of the district, safety officials, the chiefs of police and their lieutenants, the SROs, the chiefs from the fire department, their deputy chiefs. We have representation from the school committee and Ms. Lorraine Levy, who is a former state trooper, so she has a...
We figured it would be a good
That's her
mix.
wheelhouse. And then it's along with, we invite members from BSU, Highway Department, our busing company, Lucini Buses, Eric Delisle from Chartwells, because we have food allergies that we need to speak of, and
safety.
different safety. And then it's our collective administrative team, principals, directors, the assistant superintendent, and myself. And it's a round table, and what we do is we consistently and constantly review our safety protocols and procedures. If there's any research that the safety officials feel is new on the scene and that we should be made aware of, we'll send some of our principals or myself. I'm going to be going to an ALICE training, which is a different way of looking at the lockdown procedure. And that was at the request of our incredible school resource officer, Lou Pacheco, here on the Raynham side, and he's going to attend that with myself and Mr. Powers. And then we bring that information back to the committee. If we have to revise or update our safety protocols, we do. We want to stay current in what safety officials are. And I've said it time and time again, the relationship we have with our safety officials on both sides of the district is second to none. I can call any of those folks at any time. I did this morning. I called Lieutenant Schlatt's on the Bridgewater side, just for a question that wasn't even in regard to safety, just a question of protocol of how they do things within their department, and just to have that point of reference. But I mean, to call the lieutenant of a police department the size of Bridgewater and for him to pick up and just have that conversation for 10-15 minutes, that just shows you the partnership we forged with these folks, and it's a great one. And it's one that obviously we need, because that keeps our students and our faculty safe. And that was when Dr. Forbes implemented that about 3 or 4 years ago. That was her mission, and I'm happy to continue on in her legacy with that.
Excellent. So what else is on your agenda? I know a lot of items came forward at the school committee meeting last night.
Well, we have right now, we're waiting, getting back to what we talked about with maybe Park versus MCAS.
Yes.
The commissioner sent out some correspondence to all of the superintendents and charter schools. I believe that was on Tuesday, and stating that at this point, he has not made a full recommendation to the Massachusetts,
Which is kind of amazing.
the Massachusetts Elementary and Secondary Committee, and that is the committee that will vote on November 17th whether the state will move towards Park and or will remain MCAS. What he is suggesting to the committee is maybe there is a third option, and the third option is that he has said it may be a hybrid of Park and MCAS, and he's referring to it as MCAS 2.0. Now, no information was actually given to us about MCAS 2.0, but getting back to the decision that we as a district, with Dr. Forbes, myself, and the support of the committee last year, having with that idea of shifting resources into an assessment that may not come to fruition. This is an example of what our fear was, because we did not. I have a pretty good relationship with Robert Lee, who is the chair of the accountability division up at the department. And I would kind of tap into him periodically, like, where are we? Where's the committee kind of wavering to? And once New York State pulled out of Park, usually where New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts goes in terms of curriculum instruction is where kind of the rest of the country follows. A lot of Common Core, like many people may not know, is based upon the original standards that we had within our Massachusetts state frameworks, because they're very high in rigor. So once that happened, that committee, I guess, kind of felt as though, well, maybe we don't want to go in this direction. And there's 9 members, and at one point the vote to go Park was 9-0, and then once New York backed out, it became 6-3. And since then, not much information's trickled down to the local levels. So at that point last year when we made that decision, we said we need to just kind of continue on with the resources where we need them to be to prepare our students for MCAS. You fast forward to the correspondence that we received the other day, and I'm saying, well, you know, looks like we kind of made a pretty good decision in that I don't feel as though they have a real definitive answer yet as the direction they want to go in. So we made a recommendation, a school committee member made a recommendation last night to possibly draft a letter to send to that committee, because there's going to be a public forum on November 16th. I'm going to attend that public forum. It's at Malden High School, and if there is public forum, I might bring that letter and see if we could actually read it aloud to the committee.
Concern, obviously, is that if they're going to go with what it's been, fine, no problem. But if they want to change at this late stage something for the spring, that's going to be really kind of difficult.
And that's what I made a point of last night at school committee. Like, I would like to remain MCAS for this school year, just because that's what we are familiar with. That's what we've had professional development in the areas of. And to me, the timeline is very aggressive to make a decision in November for an assessment that's going to be implemented this coming March of 16. So the information within the letter would express that concern about the timeline. Could it be a situation where they make a decision in November, but maybe it's implemented in the spring of 17? Whether that be Park, MCAS, or MCAS 2.0, that would at least give us the time right now in budget season to budget for the professional development needed, any resources to support whatever that assessment is, and first and foremost to prepare our teachers and our students for that assessment so that they can have a sense of success when they participate in that assessment. So that will be kind of the gist of that communication to the community. And I thought about it last night after our school committee meeting, that I think I really want to attend that public forum on the 16th, because the following evening is November 17th, where they're actually going to have the vote, and then the following night is November 18th, which is our school committee meeting, and at that point our assistant superintendent, Mr. Powers, will read out the report from the committee and from the Massachusetts Elementary and Secondary Education Committee, who make that decision about Park or MCAS. So whatever they decide, Pat, we'll be ready for. We roll with the punches around here, and we just want to make sure that their decisions don't negatively impact our teachers and our students. So we'll have to sit back and see. But the way I see it now is, if you're adding a third assessment,
Probably they can't decide between 1 and 2,
Well,
so come up with 3.
it's like when you're a football coach and you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. So it's like, you have 2 assessments, you have no assessments. So we'll just have to see where it goes, but we'll roll with the punches. So that's one thing that's really on our radar screen right now. We have implemented some new curriculum initiatives this year. I mentioned earlier our Everyday Math 4. So now we have a consistent math program, grades K through 5, which when I first came on the scene, we had like 3 or 4 different curriculum and texts at that level in grades K through 5. We also implemented a new Glencoe math series in grades 6 through 8. So the teachers are over the moon about that, because now it's all totally aligned to Common Core, and it's very user friendly, and it has a digital component to it. So they're very happy with that. And the other big initiative for our district this year is we're moving to a true co-teaching model in our inclusion classrooms, which means that we're providing training, which we already have in September during our professional development week, for general ed teachers and special ed teachers to work collectively within our inclusion special ed classrooms, and sharing of research-based practices within those environments to make sure that our students are receiving education in the least restrictive environment, and their days not being fragmented, and they're not being pulled out, and they're being able to be within the same inclusionary settings with their peers, which is so important from a social emotional standpoint, which is
Sure.
tied in to the academic piece if you read the research. So so we're doing a lot of training with that. We've hired through a special ed budget. We have what are called co-teaching specialists that we're training every month in webinars with Lisa Deeker. She's a professor down in Florida. She's the guru of co-teaching. We've forged a nice relationship with her. Her son attends Springfield College, so she likes to come to this area of the country to visit him. And we're going to be doing those trainings, and that information is then going to be brought back into our site-based professional learning community time that allow ongoing professional development for our teachers, and along with our administrators. And we've all tied in our professional practice goals of the evaluation system as an administrative team to facilitate the implementation of a true co-teaching model within the district. And if you see the research behind that, the way in which you are going to positively impact the special ed population is through co-teaching. And that's what we need to do, because right now we're having some difficulty in reaching that area of our population in terms of the targets set by the state. So that's the real big initiative this year.
Terrific, sounds good. And of course, the parent portal is new, and I understand lots of people are getting on board.
Yeah, it's great. So Meg Cohen, I can't say enough about our database manager. I made a comment last night. If I could clone her, I totally would, because she is such a hard worker, and she has, as the director of curriculum and then the assistant superintendent, you can blame that old guy for bringing in all of these digital pathways and all this technology in a very short period of time that really need all of this data entry pieces to it, not to mention all of the state reporting that she has to do with our EPIMS, which is our employee information, and SIMS, which is our student information. So there's a lot of data entry that goes along with her job, and she's a one-woman show. So, but anyway, in terms of the parent portal, that's been her baby from the beginning, and she's done a fabulous job with it. But there's a data entry piece to that as well, because all of the invitations for parents to set up the portal went through an email that we have within our student information system. When we realized that a lot of parents weren't receiving the invite, I put out an instant alert, which is now what we call AP Connect, and we put it up on our social media page, our Facebook page, and our website. And we said, if we don't have an updated email address for you, you're not going to be able to receive the invite. After we did that, we had a high influx. I think she said something like 1,200 emails came to her in a very short period of time. But she's got it out there, and she's pushed it out, and since then we've had a high increase. And I think last night the percentage she gave, 58% of our parents throughout the district are now uploaded and ready to go. And what's really going to be beneficial of this parent portal is that it's going to allow us as a district to go paperless for a lot of the things that we send home. I have 2 elementary students. I see the take-home folder they bring in home every day with all of the information in there. If we could just digitally put this up to the parent portal and they could access that information, people don't realize it, but it's something like a paper within the operational budget. If you can cut that resource down,
Sure.
I mean, you could get staffing. You could get a lot of different things within the operational budget that you don't have to buy paper for. So, and just from as in terms of being a little bit more green as a district, going that way,
Absolutely.
and that's something that I want to do too, is kind of look at the practice of going a little bit more green. But that parent portal is great. We're going to use it to push up our report cards. We already pushed up our high school progress reports. We're creating a common template for our grades 5 through 8 progress reports, so they'll go up to those. So that's a lot of paper we're saving right there and then. And then teachers have used it in different ways. Some teachers use it to post grades, some to post their newsletters, however they want to do that communication piece. And what we encourage the educators within the district to use is, remember, part of their evaluation now, Standard 3, is about community outreach and family outreach. if they put all these things up to the portal, it's very easy to show your evaluator your evidence. You just print out your portal, or you
Sure.
don't have to print out your portal. You just bring the portal to your evaluator. So we're very excited about it, and Meg's done a terrific job with that.
Terrific. Believe it or not, we are just about out of time, but want to thank you so much for having a great start as the new superintendent and for coming in and giving this report to our district, and we'll look forward to being back on our next episode of the BR Connection.
Thank you, Pat, and thanks for the support of the school committee. Have been terrific in my
welcome.
first 30 days.
You're welcome. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of the Bridgewater Raynham Connection.